So good evening and welcome. So the topic is about meditation, spirituality and God. And I did think, where would I start from? Because it's a big topic and you don't know which is the most appropriate point, but actually I think I will start from that, the whole idea and reality of the still point. Because in our world, where there are so many upheavals, so many chaotic conditions, I'm not saying that this is totally new, it's happened before, but now it is much more on a global scale. I think the people who always made a difference were the people who could be stilled. Of course, when we hear this word stillness, we think that maybe nothing happens. But actually, those who are able to remain still, those who are able to go into themselves with confidence and trust in life, they're the ones who are able to actually find solutions for themselves and for others. They don't grasp for truth. They are not feeling frustrated or wanting to escape anything, but just being able to connect with that point of stillness within. And in that point of stillness within, when the mind is able to free itself from thinking a lot, when the intellect and the heart move away from analyzing and judging people too much, then there's a space created inside that is able to tune in. And it's so very important now to be able to tune in, to tune into my own self, to tune into God, as God, that supreme benevolent energy truly is. Not the church God necessarily, or the religious one, but a source of democratic benevolence. And then, of course, to be able to tune in to others. And often this is a very big problem, because when I'm not tuned into myself properly, how can I possibly be tuned in to God? How can I possibly be tuned in to others? How can I develop that real compassion and understanding? And we understand that actually the foundation of everything to work is respect. Love comes along later. I know people think that love comes first, but actually it comes later. Respect is needed first. Because within that respect, there's an embrace of things that are different, things that may not go my way, things that may be very different to what I am. But with respect, I take a step back and I value things and I value others. And above all, which is, I think, again, a very important thing for now, of course, these things have always been important. And the drama of life shows that at certain crucial moments, certain things have to be remembered and relearnt. And when I begin to go deep into that still point and into silence, then it's like my amnesia starts to go away. And I think, aha, click. Have you been in those click situations where, without too much analysis, without too much knowledge, go, yes, I get it. And so the need of the moment is respect, because on the basis of respect there's harmonization and healing. But with all of that, the importance of partnership. Because if a human being becomes narcissistic and self-centered, then it's very difficult to have partnership. And for life to flow, for life to be creative, for life to have meaning, there has to be a partnership. Partnership is what composes partnership is friendship, and on the basis of friendship, relationship. So first, the partnership with my own self. How do I like myself? How do I treat my mind? People often complain that they are stressed. Most people. I think in Denmark also, people get stressed, don't they? I don't think it's only in Greece or, Italy. And always it's the same. You find that in all countries, all places, people have the same needs, and usually the same reasons create a particular condition. More or less. And usually lots of stress means too much ambition, too many expectations, and often too many selfish desires. So, and the value of greed, like have to have. The more I have, the more I am. The more I have, the more I am. And then I can be approved by others, And sometimes this, this mania for approval and opinion really makes me lose my dignity. And then there's a barrier between I and me. And this is the whole reason for so many psychological problems. I mean, psychology began because there was a crisis in identity. Psychologia, psyche means soul. So, the connection back to the roots, my spiritual identity. So my partnership with myself begins when I have a sense of identity. Not just the social or physical one. Also, it's not that it's not important, but especially my own spiritual identity. And in that spiritual identity, I realize there are so many resources inside that, how can I bring them out? First of all, yes, it is silence, reflecting. And I'm able to bring them out when I also have a very old-fashioned thing, which is not too popular, I know. Humility. It's not too popular, is it? It depends how you understand it. Everything depends on how you understand it, doesn't it? And this is why I find the work, even, especially on my own self, I have to keep redefining things. And so humility brings a great deal of openness in my heart and mind. Humility is not subservience. Humility is, opening the door to new learning. And so with this humility plus confidence, I wish to research in myself. I wish to go deep. Again, not that it takes a lot of thought. It's just a willingness to discover new things, a willingness to remember, and not to be afraid of what I meet. Because some things are good, and some things, let's say, are not so good. But all are necessary. The not so good, they help me also to grow if I can understand why they got there. My fear, my anger, my rejection of others, I used to have this person, she used to complain to me all the time. Everybody rejects me. I feel rejected. Why is it like that? All these complaints all the time. And as I got to know her very well, I noticed one very deep characteristic in her. She was always criticizing everybody. Always criticizing everybody. This one doesn't do this one should have done it like this one that, this one that. She didn't realize she was doing it. But a person who is very critical all the time, has the ego of thinking they can do it better first. And secondly, if you're very critical, you're always rejecting other people all the time. So gradually that boomerangs back. It may take 20 years. It may take 30 years. Actually, it may even take 1 year. It depends on how deep the criticism is. But it gradually boomerangs back. And because she was always giving that energy, this is what she received. And so many things are like that. So many things. How I feel depends on me. It doesn't depend on the other person. Does it? Or does it? Maybe I'm wrong. But when I have a partnership with myself, when I have a friendship with myself, I'm willing to see these things and I change. I enjoy to change. We are all students in this universe. And the point is, if I don't change things, the same problems, the same patterns keep repeating over and over again. I move away from one person. If I'm not changing myself, I'll meet that same type of person somewhere else, or that same situation will come in front of me. If I don't change, not only will there be repetition of problems, but I'll complain a lot. My life will be a life of complaint, battle, struggle, instead of it being a joy. So the friendship with myself helps me to clear myself, and this is why I do need silence, because silence gives me the time and the space to reflect. And we really do have so many very, very miraculous qualities within ourselves, if we just acknowledged it. You know, when I was living in Australia, often there were bushfires. And I remember one particularly strong bushfire. And what happened in that bushfire, all the trees, the eucalyptus trees and other plants, were absolutely burnt. Huh? I mean, it's like charcoal. Do you know what charcoal is? I mean, you can write with it after. But absolutely burnt. And, you know, I really thought, that's the end of this forest. That's the end of this. And then after 2 weeks it rained. And after the rain, you know, you saw these little red leaves coming out of the eucalyptus trees. And you would never have thought, you know, it could possibly happen. And they grew bigger and bigger. And then I asked a friend of mine who works with forests and forestry, he works in the forest things, and I said, you know, what happens? You know, how come? Well, you know, the sap is not burnt, the sap is there, plus the eucalyptus tree has very, very deep roots. Those will not burn. It can go very deep and find nutrients and water. And it will come back to life. Actually, it renews itself through this. And I said, why are the leaves red? Because they're red. You know, sometimes the branches were long like this and they were red. So they're red because the animals think that red is poisonous, so they don't go and eat it. So it knew how to protect itself. Huh? So, and I thought, gee, a tree can do that. What about a human being? Because we get burnt by so many things. Situations burn us. We hold resentments. We hold bitterness. We justify it. And it really, limits us a great deal, but we hold on. But the wound doesn't enable the soul to forgive and let go of things. And it's like the eucalyptus tree. With its roots, it searched for the nutrient. Its sap was still moving. And as it was growing, it was able to protect itself. And so, human consciousness, it's able to do these things if it's able to connect. If it's able to connect with itself, its deep self. And then, of course, the relationship with the self is the turning within. But then the next step for there to be healing and harmonizing, which is something, again, very much needed these days, is then the vertical movement towards the Supreme Source. Not horizontal. It's very important, this step. Because usually when we don't feel well, when things go wrong, we immediately move horizontally, don't we? to another person. If we're upset with somebody in the office and we want to unload, or we're upset with a friend or somebody, we want to unload. And it's normal to want to unload and to lighten the self, but the problem is, if I go to somebody and then start gossiping, I mean, what kind of help will that be? And usually we try to find the people who are going to agree with us about that person. And so that makes us feel supported. But it doesn't work. It doesn't work. But although I may need to unload, I may need to lighten myself, I have to do it in the right way. Because if I talk wastefully about others, with those who agree with me about that person, it's not a solution. Things are not going to get better. But I need to lighten. I need to unload. So I have to go to the right source. It's like, if you want bread, if you want to buy bread, you don't go to the doctor, do you? You go to the baker. Or if you want, if you want medicine, you go to the doctor, you don't go to the baker. So sometimes we make very wrong selections of where to get the right support, and this increases the problem. And again, if I'm constantly looking on the negative side of things, and I get very intense in my emotions and in my reactions about someone or something, my vision narrows completely. And when vision narrows, of course the heart narrows, and I can become quite obsessive. And then those wasteful thoughts circulate, not just in my mind, then in my being, and then of course it's going to be in my face and my vibration. So what to do? I have to learn to move vertically. This is one of the things that we learn in meditation. Okay, it's two things. I move vertically and I connect with the source. Or of course, if I can't do that so well, at least I go to the right person who's able to do the things properly. But in meditation, we connect with the Supreme Source. What is the Supreme Source? There's been lots of controversy about this. People have even fought wars about this being. And there's a whole, encyclopedic volumes of what this being is, how this being works. But it's a lot simpler than all of that. Because what has happened often is that people, either individually or as organizations, have had their own ambitions and their own power games. And so they use the name God or whatever to camouflage that. So big misrepresentation. But in yoga, when we think of the Supreme Source, we think of a very benevolent, universal and available energy. That it's available for anybody. Doesn't matter the label, doesn't matter the time. What matters then? What matters is a very clean motive. That's what matters. It is said that the one who has an honest heart attracts the benevolence of that one. Because very often labels have been used to create prerogative and privilege, and have been used very, very cruelly, I would say, by, again, individuals or organizations. Again, I'm not here to condemn organizations or individuals. It's not it's not the way for there to be positive change. The way for the positive change is concentrate what I have to do, not what others have done or didn't do or should have done. My improvement, my change is never going to happen by looking at the wrongs of others or the weaknesses of others. It will never happen. Very often when I do that, it's like I'm making an excuse not to take responsibility for what I have to do here and now. But to get a general picture, at least, of a benevolent being who is also in that stillness and is also that creative point of energy. And when the human mind and the human heart connect with that, it's like plugging into a socket and that flow of energy really coming very deep into the soul, into the human soul, to the human spirit. And it refreshes and it re-energizes. It changes my eyes. You know that? My vision towards others becomes much more compassionate. My vision is far more equality. You know, I don't jump into a judgment too quickly. You know, sometimes we'll say, well, you know, I feel this about this person, and I'm usually right. Yeah, okay, good. But whatever I may see or feel about somebody, if I am if I am spiritual or positive, I would think, okay, let me maybe give the opposite of what they're giving out. If they're impatient, let me give patience. If they have anger, let me give peace. Do I have that strength? Because it takes the strength to do that. Huh? Otherwise you feel you're a victim, don't you? You know, he's angry, and I let him be angry with me. Who does he think he is? Huh? But to say, you know, let me be an instrument of real peace at this moment. Let me try to, you know, cancel this anger. Let me try to cancel the dishonesty. Let me try to cancel the suspicion by being trusting. If I have those roots, like a eucalyptus tree, if I have those roots very deep inside me, I won't be afraid to be damaged. I can't be, actually. But for this too, I require also this connection with the Supreme Source. Again, on the basis of friendship, not just fear or need. And the human spirit or human life does need that light. I mean, it's like on the earth. You know, we have life on the earth, flowers, trees, animals, all of this. But you know, if there's no light coming from the source of the sun, these things cannot grow. They cannot express their uniqueness, because that light and that warmth facilitates life and sustains life. And of course, this connection, which will help me to sustain the best in myself and let me see the best in myself, is quiet. It's very quiet. It's very personal. It's very incognito. There's no need to show off with it, or to prove anything to anyone. Why? Because if there's that real connection, then my behavior is the mirror of that connection, not my ability to convince or to speak. And what behavior, though? People may ask, what behavior? And the basis is a non-violent behavior. The behavior that can create well-being, the behavior that can experience equality with others, the behavior that values. That type of behavior is regarded as spiritual behavior, and that behavior is regarded as the reflection of that connection. And so when people say they're connected with that source, and then, you know, there's killing and violence and wars, it's just abstract. How can you say you love, you know, you're in love with someone and then you want to kill everybody else? I mean, it doesn't work. It doesn't go. And very often people's relationship with God has been it's been abstract. Of course, there have always been people who were not like that. So they had often such a power of purity and positivity that they could really uplift and liberate and influence others in a very, very, again, respectful way. And so this point source, the seed of life, belongs to every soul, and it is quite democratic. And heaven, hell, is another thing that people use a lot. I remember when I was little, I used to be threatened with it, because I didn't say my prayers sometimes, and I was told, if you're naughty more than 3 or 4 times today, you're going to be in a lot of trouble with God. When you're very little, you believe these threats. But then after, as you grow up, you said, does love threaten? Does love accuse? Does love condemn? You ask these questions. And actually, love liberates, and love gives you back to yourself. That's even with a human being, eh? When a human being loves another human being, and it's not the Hollywood love, it's the spiritual love. If it's a spiritual love, there's liberation for the person who is loved. There's not possessiveness and dependence, actually. Yeah. Dependence. Because where there's dependence, there's always some kind of sorrow. People sometimes tell me, but this is normal, it's human life. Okay. What you aim and what you believe in is what you get. But I always think, qualitatively, shouldn't things be improving? If I have happiness, shouldn't a little bit, not one day a week or one day every month? Shouldn't it be try to improve it a little bit more permanent? Trust, more permanent. Because what's normal and what's natural are quite different. Many things are normal that are not right. And in a culture, that can happen. We see it in the examples of history. Natural is different. I always think natural is something that is original and it comes from the inner source, myself, and from the supreme source. And it always creates a balance and harmonization. This was always understood, by the way. I don't think I'm saying anything really very new. Yeah. It's just that we need to be reminded from time to time. And even in medicine, in ancient medicine, it's always, I always quote this because I've always found it very, very useful for myself. Hippocrates, the doctors always take the Hippocratic Oath. He's the person who set out all the things of medicine, and he used drama therapy, he used water therapy, he used all these things. People don't know that, but he did. And the main advice he gave to his student doctors was that the physician, the physician is the follower or the student of nature. That actually nature has her principles, and when people break those principles, then there's imbalance. When there's imbalance, there's disease. And that disease is emotional, mental, and physical. And so when patients came, he changed their diet, he changed the water they drank, he actually put them into silence, and, one thing he did for 1 week, no relatives were allowed to visit. No relatives were going. I don't. If you know Greek people or Italian people, or these people, very emotional when somebody's sick, and it's anything but positive to help the person get well. So he said once, So for 1 week they were not allowed. So these natural things is what we return them, and that connection with the Supreme Source is what we really return to. We return to natural things, not theological things, not philosophical things. It's a very, very simple and very clear. There's not time to go into all of that now. I thought time was up.
No, no.
I thought that was quick. I thought that is pretty fast. So anyway, because it was there, I was giving a signal. I don't know, it was the water. And so when we speak of relationship with the Supreme, it's like the plants with the sunlight. There are laws, aren't there? You can't, you can't plant, for example, watermelon seeds in the Arctic, even when it's summer. Can you? I know science tries to do lots of things, but you can't. There are laws, there are principles. Law maybe sounds a strong word, but there are principles, and principles are for maintaining balance and well-being. And the natural world works like this, and we, as part of that natural world, need to work like this, but we break rhythms all the time. All the time. So things happen. I remember when I was in India, we stayed up very late to do a particular project after 12. And, then later on we were kind of slightly scolded because, we were like this in the morning, a bit tired. But we stayed up late. And then the person was telling us, that, look, your body has to follow the rhythm of the day. There's a rhythm in the day. There's a rhythm in nature. Birds don't start singing at 10 o'clock at night. Have you seen any birds start singing at 10 o'clock at night? Yeah. Flowers, some of them even close at night time. There are many things that happen. The vibration of the earth is actually going to rest. Actually, and the body is following that. Everything's going to rest. And you hype it up. So what will happen is that's going to influence the mind a lot. And so what happens, even if you sleep till 10 o'clock, what happens later is that a work you could do in half an hour, it will take you 2 hours. If you're in that habit, if you do it once, doesn't matter, but if you get into that habit. It made me very aware of how much even the physical body is very connected to the rhythms of nature. And that means that's spiritual. Because sometimes people think spiritual is just, I think, I'm a soul. And when I'm dead, I go somewhere else. No, it's all here, by the way. Spiritual means to be able to have the other partnership, I say, with God, but also the partnership with nature and the partnership with matter. A spiritual person has a good partnership with nature and matter. And when you have a good partnership, you don't exploit and you don't misuse. Everything is used in the right way. Whatever that material thing is. Whatever it is. Whether it's money, whether it's property, whether it's this, whether it's that. And then the physical things that give us life, that keep us alive. Air, water. There's a deep respectfulness for that. A deep respectfulness for my body, the instrument of expression. If I'm not spiritual, I won't have that much respect. I'll put anything into my mouth. As well, put any rubbish into my mind. So a spiritual person has that very good relationship with matter. And of course, with Mother Nature. Mother Nature. People are asking, why does this happen? Why does that happen? And in religious countries, again, I don't think probably it happens here, but in sometimes religious bordering on superstition, in these places, say, oh, God is punishing us. God is making all these things happen. And depending on the group who's there, I will venture to say, but it's got nothing to do with God, actually. Who then? I said, well, maybe it's us. Us? I haven't done anything. And I said, yeah, well, sometimes even our indifference is also a cause for these things to happen. But, we all do a little bit of some violence that happens. So I have to, it's a matter of checking the amount of violence I start to do. Because also many types of violence, even towards nature, are regarded as normal. It's normal. Cutting down trees indiscriminately, normal. Many other things. I guess I said I won't go into it now, but nature follows her balance and her rhythm, and if human beings are cutting into that rhythm and balance, she's going to make an effort to get back into it. And so there are consequences in that. So this partnership, self, the supreme, matter, nature, and then of course with other people. Probably the most difficult balance of all to keep. Why is it difficult? Oh, maybe it's not. But it seems to be. The more needy I am, the more I'm going to have difficulty in having balance in my relationship with others. Because there's one prayer constantly I say, I want this, I want this, I want this, I want this, I want this. You have to give it to me. You have to make me happy. And the more I think that my happiness depends on another person, the more trapped I'm going to be. Because I've given him or her the reins of my life, have power over me. Again, it's done very unconsciously. And love, as I said, is a very liberating experience, but many times in relationship it becomes a relationship of obligations. People, they don't do something selflessly many times. And so they do something, and it's like going fishing, they go fishing and there's a bait, the person grabs it, they are hauled in, and the person is reminded, I did this for you, I did this for you, I did that for you, I did the other for you. Maybe not always verbally. And people feel trapped. Now, the point is I mustn't do it to others, and then of course others not do it to me. Of course they will not. It depends on me whether I give them permission. It depends on me. And so in silence and meditation, I'm using the art of silence in terms of reflection and observation. I'm using spiritual principles for my daily life, by the way, for here and now. It's not a matter going to heaven or, going to hell or whatever. It's here and now, how I use these principles. And, I spoke about one of these principles already, real deep respect for all things, with the acceptance that comes from that, the vision of equality, the power that there is in a good intention. Because one thing that everyone is hungry for is well-being. And this well-being, one thing is created through partnership, but also personally, each one needs a few things. I've spoken about some of them already, but one of these is a sense of identity. Then it's a sense of belonging. Then it's a sense of purpose. And then it is a sense of the divine. If a person doesn't have these things, life becomes rather difficult. And I find more and more that spirituality in terms of how to live honestly and more contentedly and more responsibly it's becoming more and more a necessity. It's not just a choice. If I want to, not just for myself to be well, but for the people around me to be well. Because again, a basic principle is always this: marrying and recognizing my inner world with my outer world. How do they match today? The future's the future. The past, it's for learning, not for regretting or for nostalgia. It's for learning. Now, how am I marrying this? So the sense of identity, first of all. I do need to know who I am and what I am. This is age-old, by the way. In Greece, in ancient Greece, always there was this preoccupation amongst teachers and students, know yourself. And it said that when you know yourself, then you will know how the universe works, what the principles are. And the sense of identity, again, as we said, spiritual, and then from the spiritual, the social and the physical. Because if I just rely on the social, again, I become very dependent on people's opinion. And then it becomes very important to be in a particular way, I don't know, some cultures, to be dark, to be thick, or to be intelligent, or to have money, or to be young, or to be slim, or to be this. All these, different physical and social things start to be more important than actually the inner person. So I try to look into the inner person. What is the inner person? This is the thing that I have to look into very deeply. And then the sense of belonging. Every person needs to love and to feel loved. Because if I don't have this sense of belonging, I feel very rootless. I don't feel anchored. And when I don't feel anchored, when a problem comes, or a big negativity comes, it's like a storm, and I'm thrown this way and that way. And not only do I lose my confidence, and I lose my self-respect, and that's a very, very big thing, to lose one's own self-respect. And I learn to respect myself to the extent that I'm able to give love to myself. And my uncle, he was Italian, quite strongly so, and I was doing many things that were quite Australian, Anglo-Saxon, And I remember he took me aside once and said, "Look," he said, "these Australians, they all come from convicts, and you shouldn't be learning their habits and their ways and ways of thinking." But I said, "It's a freedom, I like this freedom." Then he went on. He said, I remember he saying, "Remember, that the blood of Rome is in your veins," and I thought, what does that mean? I said, "Look, my blood's red like everybody else. I mean, what does it matter?" "Oh, but I did this." I said, "As far as I remember from what I did at school," because I'm about 12, 13, I said, "they're always conquering and, killing people and, doing all these types of things. What's so great about this?" But, that's just a little example. But when we say a sense of belonging, it's not a nationalistic thing, it's not a political thing, and even not a religious thing. I belong to myself. With all humility, of course. With all humility. That egoless self-confidence that comes from self-respect. And then I belong to others. I belong to the world. I belong to the big human family. I'm not just Italian or Australian. You're not just Danish, are you? It's a bigger picture. Okay, we all have to have a place, of course. I mean, otherwise we can't function. Like a plant needs a specific place, but its beauty is offered to everybody. The fruits offered to everybody. So in the same way, yes, we need a locality for very sort of obvious reasons, practical reasons. But my consciousness, is much wider. Much wider. And the one who belongs to themselves and to the human family in the right way becomes very strong. Very strong. And I need this inner strength these days. And when you're strong, what's the sign of being very strong? You're very soft. Don't get that wrong, but soft in the sense of there's a big flexibility inside. A strong person, when they are in their inner position, they really know that who they are, and they don't have an attachment to it. I am this, I am that. No, there's that inner positioning inside. They are very flexible. They can mold. They can bend. They can embrace. And the way they love is inclusive. The more, if the more the degrees of selfishness there are in the love, in inverted commas, the more exclusive it becomes. Exclusivity is very much an expression of a lot of codependency. Where a person is genuinely inclusive, they are right in themselves, because first of all they belong to themselves. And also they feel they belong to God, but not in a fearful way, or in a way where they keep asking God for things. It's natural. It's a connection they enjoy. Not a connection I have to have. Now, friendship is the best thing, isn't it? Usually, relatives, it can work, it may not work, but you didn't have much of a choice. But friends, you choose them. So, I choose God. I choose the divine source to be friends. No one should ever, and it's a very big mistake people have made, that you have to have it. And then they make all these rituals to make sure. Because if you don't go through all these rituals, then you are excluded. But spiritual love, is not like that. And then a sense of purpose, contribution. Everybody has to feel they are contributing something for them to feel worthwhile. And often disorientation and hopelessness comes because there's not this sense of purpose. And everybody contributes something. A mother contributes a lot, a father contributes a lot, a gardener contributes, everyone contributes. It's qualitative. But because of, all these social interferences, contribution is, it's measured socially. And so things there's not a respectfulness then. Because everyone is important. Really. In a tree, the roots are important. The trunk is important. The branches are important. The leaves are important. The flowers are important. One of them's missing, and then it's not a tree anymore. And so it's very important to be able to, the word's not important, but it's very sustaining. Very sustaining if I'm able to see how the universe would like me to contribute. And the contributions may change, it may not always be the same one way. But a contribution is an offering. One offers something. And it's not selfish. And I offer through my work, a talent. And so that instrument consciousness, because as soon as I think of my talent, like my child or my work or my things, it's like it becomes quite limited again. And I don't get that contentment from it. I'm dissatisfied. But a lot of people are very dissatisfied. It's a big disease, dissatisfaction. But maybe the sense of purpose has not worked out properly. Maybe not. Maybe it's something else. And then the sense of the divine. What do I understand by divine? Because most people, when they think of divine, they think of something far away, something somewhere else. But in India, ancient Greece, there was always this saying that, until you meet the divinity inside you, you will never know how to live as a human being. It's not something separate. Spiritual love, spiritual peace, and all the wonderful things that go with that. whether it's being able to harmonize, whether it's trusting. This is a part of divinity, it's a part of spirituality. And it is, we live it here. And when I can't live it, then, gradually I have to practice it. Practice it by understanding what it means, really. What does trust mean? I trust life. Even I've had many disappointments. Don't I? Or I become wary and suspicious, or a little bit bitter, and, I look for things to go wrong first, and then I'll see. Right? How I do it. So to be able to trust is it's a very divine aspect. And I trust God, I trust other people. Okay, experience shows me that with some people I have to be a little careful. So not that I have to be naive, but I mustn't let my heart become even a little, not bitter about things, because I am a student. I'm a student. I'm learning things. And also, maybe I'm a problem for some people. Yeah? It's not always other people are a problem for me. Maybe I'm a problem for some people too. Maybe I've hurt some people along the way. I'm sure I have. So when I get that perspective, I won't be so self-righteous. So divinity is also this. Divinities have a very big heart, a generous heart. But divinity especially, yes, in the depths of silence, that I'm able to just be very still and connect. Because sometimes people say, how can meditation or silence really practically help you when there's all these things coming? You have the good intention. I mean, you don't want to get angry, you don't want to feel suspicious, but one day this happens, that happens, the other happens. How do you deal with it all? And what does it mean to make your mind still? Exactly that. Stop thinking. Right? It's impossible. At least, okay, if you not stop thinking, but reduce it. Reduce it. How? Talk to yourself. Is it worth to keep these thoughts going on and on and on like this? So actually what we do sometimes in meditation is actually we just make that thought Om Shanti. Om, I am a spiritual being, I'm a soul. Shanti, peace. It's like I connect to my original resource of non-violence. I connect to my resource of harmony. I believe it, of course. Huh? It's very important to believe it, because you can't say it mechanically. Huh? You can't sit there and say, I'm peaceful, I'm peaceful, I'm peaceful. I'm peaceful, I'm peaceful. In 5 minutes, I'll get really peaceful. But, my wife really bothered me today. She does this every single time. No, I've got to I've got to believe it, that there's that resource, and I've got to go slow. Don't think it is a sin to be slow. Because we are taught fast and more and do this. Yes. And so actually if we slow down, we feel it's a sin. It's another type of sin these days. You don't appear functional to other people. What will they think? Yes. Yeah, we have to, sometimes we need not just to go slow, but to stop. I need to stop. Like a car in the traffic, it has to stop. Like also when you buy a car, you buy a car to move from place to place, but the car has no brake. You would never buy it. Although its function is to move, it also has to stop. The same way, my life is, yes, it's to express. It's not always to stay in. I have to come out. I have to communicate. Yes, definitely. But I also have to balance it with the ability to stop. if I don't learn this ability to stop, then my mind will not get any oxygen. And it will be very stressed, very pressurized. And then that's going to come out in how I relate to other people. Everything will be very quick and fast, quick and fast, quick and fast, quick and fast. And I just don't slow down. And the most important thing you can give to another person is your time and attention. You can't do that fast. Can't. Can you? I mean, maybe I'm behind in the times, but same with my mind, 10 minutes, 15 minutes. When you go next to the sea, you see that serenity of the sea. It's the same. One slows down. And the rhythm, again, you see, the rhythm of nature is peace and harmony and order. It doesn't go fast. Does the day go faster? It's always been from time immemorial, 12 hours day, 12 hours night, roughly. I know it depends on where you are in the world, but there's this balance of day and night. You can't push a tree to go faster, grow faster. I mean, I know they do it with chemicals sometimes, but the normal thing is everything goes in stages and according to time. And this is very important with time, to be able to value time, that I always know whatever I truly wish to do, I will always have the time. So I do have time to slow down. I do have time to connect, and I can just sit. I am a spiritual being. I am peace. Your thought creates consciousness. It happens anyway. When you're angry, your face shows it so well. If you're suspicious, you're depressed, cunning, sweet, light, happy, comes on the face and the body, doesn't it? So it's happening anyway, so we just have to move the track a bit and to let it just be, just move on a more positive rails. And this is why I need silence. Silence heals. Silence enables there to be real tuning in, whether it's to my original resources, whether it is to that benevolent source which is also cooperating. I don't want to use the word help, but cooperating and guiding. And I'm not submissive to that. It's not that I have to have a submissive position to feel that divine energy. I have to have just simply a clean position, an honest position. And, the same way with other people. So, the divinity, the awareness of the unlimited, the eternal, the original, in daily life. Because spirituality, in terms of the living principles, have value personally when they're in daily life, not just for church on Sunday, or the mosque on Friday, or whatever. No, it's daily. Today I'll be a little kinder. A little kinder. Today, let me see, my ego, maybe control it a little bit more. At the end of the day, I can look back. It's okay. Why did I get in this? Why did I have these vicious, upset feelings with this person? What did they do? What did I do? So these examinations, very gentle examination, but very honest examinations, will help me a lot. It won't be, sometimes people think, oh God, I think of God, I pray to God, bam, He'll just make everything work out. It doesn't work like this. I have to position myself, get that light, of course, but then I have a mind, I have an intellect, and have to use it responsibly. And of course, in silence, when I'm connected to myself, my soul self, I'm connected to the benevolent source, to the One, a lot of thinking doesn't happen. You just get pulled into that very, very deep peace. But that may take some practice. It won't happen straight away. Of course, the mind likes to bubble. Likes to bubble. So, someone told me, says, you say these things are easy, but they're not easy. They're difficult. I said, but if you start to think that these things are difficult, they will be. So actually that's, okay, we won't say they're difficult, we won't say they're easy. We just have to feel and think they are possible. Eh? So just, it's possible to be like this. It's possible to practice these things. And there's a qualitative growth in my relationships with myself and with life. Om Shanti. So, hope it wasn't too much. Am I ahead of time?
We're ahead of time. We thought we open up for some questions before we have a meditation with Anthony. Så vi tänkte vi öppnar upp för lite spørgsmål, för vi vill låta Anthony guide en meditation för oss. Så hvis någon har lust att råpa upp eller så har jag mikrofonen här. Är det någon som har lust att spara något eller? Nej. I'm asking if they have any questions.
It couldn't have been that clear.
You're clear how to do connection?
Something.
Yeah.
Yes, hello, my name is Dorte. I was wondering, when you have this inner silence in your soul, don't you need to be in prayer also with God? Because when I experience this inner silence and peace in my soul, I really feel the connection very, very deep inside my soul when I also pray to God. And I have to imagine Him as He is around me and there's a love, but I have to put my mind to it and just not only thinking at me, but also give my spirit up to Him.
Yes.
Yeah. But I was a little bit confused because you only said that maybe I misunderstood it, because I thought you said you only need to think about yourself first.
No, the way that we think about it in yoga and meditation is that the first thought is that I position myself inside, so I'm more receptive, so that I am able to listen better, I'm able to connect better. So, because one thing is sometimes, even to God, I might just be speaking with my mind and saying things, but, I'm not also listening to catch reply. I'm not listening to catch a touching or a vibration. And so, so the whole idea is first I'm tuning myself, and that inner tuning, that inner silence, enables me to have a bigger scope of receptivity. And then, it's like with a very good friend. Sometimes you don't have to say too many things, but you're on the same wavelength. And the understandings can be picked up very, very easily. But what happens is that the soul feels a lot of empowerment. What does it mean, empowerment? Well, you feel a lot of acceptance, a lot of deep, real communication, and a very deep, positive flow, very deep. And at that particular moment, this is enough. I just want to be here in this connection and this loving silence.
Yes, I would like to know something more about the, you said the sense of belonging. First of all, I have to belong to myself. I find that almost a contradiction in terms, because if I only belong to myself, well, that is the start of it. How do I find the difference between being alone and belonging, because all I've got is myself? Could you clarify that, please?
Yes. But this is, yes, what I was saying is first to belong to myself, but then this whole thing of partnership, when I am right within myself, because some people reject themselves, they don't like themselves, they don't value what they are, they don't value what they can contribute. So in that sense, belonging to myself, I'm aware of being here and why I'm here. And then we'll say belonging to the whole human family. I make this connection also to the wider family. It's not that I just belong to myself and then just get lost in myself. I open up. But is possibly a better word would have been, to value what I am, and then, of course, value others. And this whole thing of partnership, taking this whole thing, I'm a part of all of those. It's not just me.
You mentioned that one of the first things is the sense of identity, but you also said we have a social, we have a spiritual and physical identity. We have a lot of identities, working and as a mother and as a lot of identities. So if you say the sense of, and you quoted in Greece, it was who am I, and find out who you are. How do you find the real identity through all these layers of social and working and everything?
Yes.
Is there a way to practice?
Yes. This is why we start meditation. And because the actual identity, the beginning, I find it in silence. And this whole knowledge of meditation and spiritual knowledge helps me to return to that. It's like when you see a tree, there are many aspects to the tree. You can say, there's branches, leaves, trunk, but roots. But actually it began from a seed. And so actually we go back to that. So in the same way, I have many expressions which are not, these expressions are fine. It's just that when I lose the seed of it and I start to attach myself to those identities, then things start to become imbalanced. Like, for example, if I get very attached to the role of being a parent, very attached to it, and then, children are growing up, 30, 40, and I still want to, do things that I did for them when they were 8. Something's wrong, It happens, something's wrong. It's not that I'm less caring. I'm still caring. There's still a friendship, but it's on another level, So, always the danger. You see that it's a middle path. It's a middle way to see the value of all these roles and expression, because they all do have. But at the same time, if I start to get too much support from them, and I get too attached to them, then actually what happens, I can't play it properly. Like, a parent that's very suffocating, or a teacher that becomes very arrogant with their knowledge, they lose it. And sometimes we try to get identities, a sense of self-value, sometimes through these things. So this is why, with silence, and some idea of spiritual knowledge, I just return back to the seed. And this is the exercise we do every day, is returning to the seed, returning back to that original still point. Because I am not my words, not only that, I'm not my talent, I am not my achievement. It has come from me, and that's fine, but I am more than that. But if I really attach myself only to that, and I start to have problems.
I think we have 2 questions left. Can we take them as the last 2? Is that okay?
Well, I take the chance. Some scientific people say that every knowledge is omnipresent. All knowledge is omnipresent. In Christianity, some people say, or the texts say, that God is omnipresent. When I was in Mount Abu, I read a lot about that, and maybe I never find out, but I have my own way to understand. But my question is, when I'm looking, is the one who is looking the one I'm looking for, the looker? Is God omnipresent?
Is God omnipresent?
Or is it so that the one I'm looking for is the one who is looking?
Well, as far as I understand it, it depends what people mean by omnipresence, first of all. Now, for example, the sun is in one spot. The light goes everywhere. The sun is not on the earth itself. It is from a particular position and then spreading that light. And the way that we all have a part of that. We all have a part of divinity. Our soul is divine. But, I personally would not say, I am God. I say I'm a soul. But even that, also there's difference in each one, because again, the principle of the play of life is a difference. Everyone is different. Although we may be similar on many levels, 2 eyes, nose, mouth, legs, all of that is similar. The soul also, in terms of certain qualities, is similar. But also there's a distinct difference for each one. And that is what allows things to happen. I don't have 4 arms, I have 2. Because I need it for that task, my legs for another task. So different people have different uniquenesses that allow for the creation to happen. So in terms of God, I also feel, not I just feel, but also in meditation teachings, God also he has his own distinctiveness. Although I may share certain qualities, as I may share with you as a human being, there is also something distinctive and different as well. So not, omnipresent in terms of sameness, but when I look at you, I see similarities. I see a soul, there's a quality of vision, but there still is a distinctiveness which is eternally unique. Because also, just to think, one last thing, when we speak of harmony and things being one, it's not meant that everything is the same. Oneness and harmony, it means the coming together of things that are different, but working together, like a hand or like the human body.
May I ask, I understand that meditation must have a goal. When we meditate, we must be meditating for something. We are souls coming from the uppermost, or the creator of the God. The meditation's most purpose would be to go back to Him, where there is permanent peace. Though I probably came 10-15 minutes late, I didn't get whether the subject started with that. But my question is, the purpose of meditation, is it to go back to our original source?
Like silence, meditation has different levels. One aspect of meditation is, for example, it's very linked with silence, because one aspect of silence is observing and reflecting. I'm stepping back, I'm looking at the different things that are happening, and I'm thinking, what I have to contribute and do to make it work. For example, a very dysfunctional situation or a confusion. I step back, I'm reflecting, and I'm thinking, what's going to work here better? That's one aspect. Now, another aspect of silence or meditation is a very deep concentration on something. I concentrate on it very deeply, whether it is myself, whether it is God, whether it is a particular value, to understand it better. I go into deeply concentrating. And another one is connection, communication and connection. That very high level of meditation, which they call, actually, it's another word, tapasya. And that is, yes, I'm returning back, I'm reuniting. Yoga, the word yoga means to reunite again, to relink. So in that very deep silence, the soul feels its unity and linking with God and the original home from where it came from. And then through that, it's like its battery becomes energized. So there is that aspect, of course, very, very deeply. But silence is not only that. Meditation, the aim of meditation is this link with God, but then let's say I do get filled with that energy and that clarity of heart and mind, then what will I do with it? Because you can't sit and just be getting filled and getting filled. You have to do something. Because real silence always then comes into action. I mean, you can't keep silent all the time. Whatever you get in silence, whether it's peace, whether it's lightness, whether it's love, then it is expressed in action and in behavior. So also the aim of the link with God and meditation is the improvement of my own behavior in everyday life.